Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. As you know, we have been running a series here where we are doing a preview of all the teams in the AL Central. And today we are lucky to have Dan Hayes from The Athletic and working with the Minnesota Twins. How are you, Dan?
I'm good. I got to escape the snow this morning and fly to Florida. So apologies for being the lucky one here on that. But yeah, I'm good.
Great. So the big question that's been coming out of Minnesota here in the spring training time. I mean, obviously we'll get to all the actual, like real stuff with the players and that. But the thing that's been a huge story for us down here in Chicago has been the Ishbia brothers and their bigger investment into the White Sox. Um, you've been obviously at the forefront of the story here, being in Minnesota and that whole thing kind of falling apart. Uh, what are the important details here that we need to know about this stuff?
Basically, 2.5 months ago, Justin Ishbia looked lined up to purchase the Twins. He really wanted a team. He was basically hell bent on buying a team. Obviously, they had a small investment in the White Sox before that, and there'd been lots of talk, especially when his name surfaced, that he had told Jerry previously he wanted to buy the White Sox and was kind of rebuffed on that. And hey, anytime you want to sell, but obviously Jerry loves baseball. He loves doing this and has no intention of selling right now. But sometime after it became public that Ishbia was a strong, real contender with the Twins, he was approached by the Reinsdorfs and decided to buy up more of the shares of the other investors, which essentially took him away from being the Twins owner. He stalled his plans to be the Twins owner. And look, there's no, like, as the White Sox have made it clear, and John Greenberg did a great job reporting this story with me. The White Sox made it very clear that there is no plan in place right here. Like, there's no handshake agreement, anything like that. But Justin Ishbia wants a baseball team. Justin Ishbia is not walking away from owning a baseball team. And the Twins, potential-wise, the White Sox, there's a lot more there, I think, in revenue. If they were to get a new stadium, all of that stuff. Long-term, the White Sox could be a gold mine if you were to get a stadium in an area where fans want to go and go there regardless of how the team is playing, the same as the Cubs have, where even when the Cubs suck, they still draw 30,000. If you could get something like that for the White Sox, man, wow, that product would be pretty incredible. The Twins as an organization right now are in such better shape than the White Sox are. Like, in the short term, it'd be a great buy, but I just don't think there's the probable overall gain. Like, everybody's talked about the White Sox being a monster, just a sleeping giant essentially. And the Twins are a nice product and they do have some potential, but they don't have the same kind of potential. And I think Justin Ishbia saw that and knows that somewhere down the road he's got a chance to buy the White Sox, and so he decided to go with the White Sox. And the fact this, you look at his brother Matt, who owns the Twins, and the kind of phrase around those two is "go big or go home." And the idea that the White Sox got that guy and the Twins don't, I mean, that could be a seismic shift in this division for decades to come if that's the case. And so obviously it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think him even not moving forward with the Twins was like huge news for White Sox fans, like the ones that are on Twitter and like kind of, like I think we see like Justin Ishbia, leading contender to buy Twins, and people are like putting memes up like, like, oh my God, like that would be terrible, right? But, we kind of talked about this story, and I think, Dan, like, I just think I could tell the people who read yours and John's stories on this and the people who didn't, right? Because there was some pushback, obviously, from the White Sox. But correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I think the two biggest like highlights from this story, right, are the fact that like he was he was really close to buying the Twins and chose not to.
Yeah.
And the Reinsdorfs kind of they approached them about this, correct?
Absolutely.
Like it's not like Justin Ishbia isn't getting rid of the Twins for a Coke and a smile and to help Jerry Reinsdorf build a stadium.
Right.
Like, it's just not. And regardless of what they say, like, that's fine. There's no plan in place, but there's a reason why Justin Ishbia did this and didn't just move forward with buying his own baseball team.
On January maybe 7th or 8th, In talking to a lot of people close to the sale, they were certain this team, the Twins, were going to be having picked a winning bidder by opening day. And that was going to be in place. They were confident, 100%. They felt very good about it. After John uncovered that Ishbia was looking to buy up had the deal to buy more shares of the White Sox in place, the all accounts basically changed. The confidence level changed. It's now we're going to know more in 30 to 60 days. Now, this was now a month ago, but we're going to know more in 30 to 60 days. We still think there's a good market, but the description of the market was adequate versus robust before. So it's clear that Justin Ishbia was the motivated seller. I had people all around baseball talking about how he'd been vetted by MLB, vetted by the Twins, and was making real serious inroads with business people in, business leaders in Minneapolis and the Twins territories, potential partners to buy into his group, that kind of thing. So he was absolutely serious, very for real about putting in the time and effort to get the Twins. Something had to change. And again, I appreciate what the White Sox are saying. They have to say that. One, you don't want Jerry Reinsdorf on a clock if you're the current White Sox. I know White Sox fans want Jerry Reinsdorf on a clock, but if you're the current ownership group, if you're the current administration, you don't want fans going with a countdown like, oh, Jerry's going to be done in 1 year. Why can't he be out now? So you leave the timeline empty. There's no pressure to sell right now. But clearly, there's going to be something where Justin Ishbia wants that because he wouldn't have wasted all that time and money and effort to do this. And the money is real. He was there to do it. And, the impressive part would be if the White Sox get that stadium because that place, it's just never had it's a good ballpark, but it's just never had a reason for fans to go and stick around in the neighborhood. And there's good neighborhoods around. Bridgeport is great. The bars down the street are great. But nobody sticks around for post game, and especially if the team's terrible, nobody's sticking around. If you can get that draw where there's a hotel, where there's a party zone like what the Cardinals have and what the Braves have, and what Wrigley naturally has and what Fenway naturally has, man, that's a coup for a team that's in a huge market like the White Sox, just to get way more revenue and have a chance to compete with the big boys.
How much of a story was it like early on with this that he had any of the white? Like if he had 5%, right? Like he would have had to divest regardless to buy the Twins. Was that ever even? Because I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, maybe not to you guys covering it, but to me, I was like, first off, like this is awesome, and then second of all, like wow, this is like pretty shocking.
Well, I think when that came out, of course, it was noticeable. There's no question. But I also believe they were fully convinced, the Ishbias were convinced that there was no way they were getting the White Sox because they'd put those overtures out there to buy the team before. And that's why they moved forward with the Twins. And look, maybe he was playing 3D chess and knowing that doing this would put some pawns in play, and maybe the White Sox would go, man, this would really suck for us if he goes to the Twins. Maybe that was there. But also, the amount of time and effort and money that he put in to go forward with Minnesota was significant. And so I think, worst case scenario, he ends up with the Twins, which has got a beautiful ballpark already built, has a really good foundation in place as an organization, is primed to win. If they got, an additional $20 million in budget, payroll budget, man, they'd be highly thought of in the American League and in baseball. Not Dodgers, obviously, because the Dodgers own everything. But I mean, of the other groups, the other teams, they'd probably sneak into that top 6 with what they have. If they'd been able to bring Sonny Gray back last year after winning the division the year before and winning some playoff games, they would have been in great position going into the season. And instead, they trimmed payroll by $30 million after winning their first playoff series in 21 years. And I understand the functions of business and, how ownership groups have other considerations business-wise that are there, which is the case with the Twins ownership group. But the timing of that was terrible, and it killed the fan momentum. They'd had 3 games at home in October with 39,000 fans, and it was electric. And then all of a sudden, you kill that by cutting payroll by $30 million. So, you bring if like they're an attractive team, and worst case he was going to end up with them. But man, he's a smart dude. If he thought, boy, I should put some pressure on the Reinsdorfs by saying let's go after the Twins. Either way, it was going to work out for him. But now he doesn't have to fly from Chicago to Minneapolis to attend home games.
Yes. Last thing I have on this really quick. So just what are your expectations then as far as like if a sale happens, like are the Twins going to have a new owner? Is it mid-season? Is it ever at this point? What are we thinking?
I mean, I think the family is very motivated to sell. They have a lot of obligations in other areas that, other business dealings that are tied up in commercial real estate. I think they want to be out as owners. They've had 40 years, So first it was Carl Pohlad who bought him in 1984. His three sons inherited the team in 2009 when he passed away. Well, the next generation, there's 7 or 8 grandkids of Carl Pohlad. And I think one of them wants to own the Twins. And I think the others are ready to cash in and get out. I mean, this franchise was bought for $44 million. And, anywhere from 1.4 to 1.6 to 1.8 billion dollars would be coming their way, which is incredible in the turnaround department. Looking for a similar investment myself. If you guys can put me on to a stock guy, I will. I'll put in $8 and hopefully it can turn into 300,000 overnight. But like I think they're ready. Joe Pohlad, who's currently the chairman of the group, he's 42. I think he would love to make this a life for him. But there's a lot of other people who would like to get the big payday and focus on their other areas of interest, which they're varied. They have, Hollywood, they have their Pepsi business, they have commercial real estate. They're all over the map. And I think that there's enough there to keep people interested for their lifetimes.
That's quite a lot of stuff to, keep tabs on. So I
It
can
is.
imagine they got a lot of stuff to consider.
Yeah, it is. And look, it's the same as the White Sox. Twins fans want a new owner in the worst way. The similarities are striking, except for the difference in market size. The fact that the White Sox play in Chicago and have access to that size of a fan base comparatively. That's the only difference when you've got two teams that their fans have been saying the owners have been, not investing enough, and it's frustrating at times. And you hear, granted, I've covered both those teams, so I hear those fan bases more than the others, just because of followers I still have, and but it's very similar in the way that the complaints come. And look, it's understandable. I mean, fan frustration here is at an all-time high. When you look at this Twins team right now, I think and I know we're getting this later, but I think this Twins team is primed to win the division. And on our recent Athletic fan morale poll, the fans had the Twins 4th in the division, ahead of the White Sox, and it's like, and man, there's no playoffs in sight, and it's like, are you guys are you high? Like, what are you missing here? Because there's a full team in place right now, in a winnable division. So I just think, regardless of how things turn out, the family's motivated, and the fans are ready for a new ownership. So I think it happens. I don't know what that timeline's like, because this is a serious regrouping process, but it'll get there, I'm sure.
Well, fan doom and gloom, gray cloud following them around, aside. So we know that the Twins have players in place. What do you think that the expectations are for the Twins here in 2025?
I mean, in the clubhouse and in the front office, they think they're going to win the division. You look at their rotation. They have rotation depth 1 through 7, which they're really excited about. Pablo Lopez had a middling season for him last year, and his if you look at his FIP and independent other metrics, his numbers were good. He ended up with like a 4.05 ERA or somewhere in that area. He could have been much better. He still strikes out a ton of batters. Joe Ryan was having potentially a 6-WAR season. He got hurt for the first time for real in his career. He had a groin strain the year before, but the first arm injury last year. He's healthy, and they're really excited about him. Bailey Ober is as consistent, and the White Sox have seen so much of him over the last couple of years. Bailey Ober is right there, but behind that, Chris Paddock, it's his second full year removed from Tommy John surgery. They're really excited about him. He's in a contract year. Last year, he pitched 80 innings. The numbers were there were about 5 starts that really skewed the numbers, and I know any pitcher can have that, but he had about 10 or 11 really interesting starts, and his strikeouts for the innings were close to 9 per 9, which was like right around his career high. He's actually throwing right now as we're talking and looking great, and they're excited about him. And behind them, because Joe Ryan got hurt, because Chris Paddock only pitched 80 innings and got hurt last year, they have Simeon Woods Richardson, David Festa, and Zebby Matthews, who all were, Simeon Woods Richardson is a second-round pick who finally found his footing last year, got some velocity last year, looked good. And then Festa and Zebby Matthews were top 100 prospects. All of them basically got all their seasoning last year. So they don't have to learn at this point. They've already learned in the majors, and they learned in a pennant race the hard way as they were getting tired. They have those 7 to rely on, and behind them, they have a really solid, interesting group of guys at AAA. Like, they feel like their starting rotation depth is really good. Their bullpen is solid, 1 through 8 with Duran, Jax, Brock Stewart, who we've seen about 41 innings the last 2 years, and he's electric in those 41 innings. If he's healthy, and by the way, that phrase will come up a lot in this. If he's healthy, that's really the key for the Twins. Because their bullpen's super deep and their position side is talented. I mean, Byron Buxton, Carlos Correa, Royce Lewis, if they're healthy, are really good players. Correa and Buxton can be elite. Royce Lewis certainly has the home run power to be elite, but he just hasn't been able to stay on the field. And if they're healthy, it's a dynamic group.
Yeah, so I think I know the answer to like what needs to happen to win the division, right? Like you just kind of talked about it. So like, if things go wrong, right, it's Buxton, Royce Lewis, even Correa, like just injury riddled type of, they're struggling for that reason because they are pretty talented. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, last year on August 17th, they were 70-53. They had a 95% chance of making the playoffs. That's with Royce Lewis getting hurt on opening day and missing 58 games, or maybe it was a lot of games. But he misses a ton of time with a quad injury sustained while running the bases after homering in his first bat off Cole Reagans. Then, so they're still cruising. They have a really good, fun summer. I think it was Correa got plantar fasciitis in the other foot at the All-Star break and missed 53 games. Byron Buxton went out with a hip injury, and then Joe Ryan. So they've already lost at this point from their rotation Anthony DeSclafani before he ever threw a pitch in the first place. He got hurt in spring training. Then Chris Paddock went down at the end of June, and he never returned. They were still getting along with Ober, Ryan, and Pablo Lopez, and then 2 rookies. But then Joe Ryan goes down with the, I think it's a teres major, it's basically a shoulder injury. It's the same thing Grayson Rodriguez had from Baltimore. It didn't require surgery. He actually was fully healed, had complete resolution after 3 MRIs by November, and is throwing the ball like his numbers aren't good right now, but his velocity is good. His pitches have good action. So he's finding his way back. But when he went down, all of a sudden the Twins were counting on 3 rookies, Matthews, Festa, and Simeon Woods Richardson, who all were at career highs by early August and basically couldn't get 5 innings. The hope was to get 15 outs out of each of those guys. When you have 3/5 of your rotation giving you 15 outs, then the bullpen's overworked, and then the offense feels the pressure. And it was an epic collapse. They went 12-27. The last week was hideous. There was a couple of just utterly forgettable games. There was a doubleheader sweep in Boston. There was a loss to the Marlins in 13 innings where the Twins had like 8 chances to win it and they blew it. There was so much. It was just a collapse, and there wasn't finger pointing, but it definitely got tense in the clubhouse at the time a little bit, and it was just an ugly way to see the season end. That's what can happen if they're not healthy. I think had they had pitching, they probably had enough offense to survive. So the idea that they have more pitching this year, that's a great place to start. If the position side can stay healthy and the pitching has some struggles, there's enough on that position side, but you need one or both to stay healthy and keep it going. There's plenty here to win the division and do some damage in the playoffs, but it's all that big what if.
On the south side of Chicago, the injury things just hit us right in the feels. We we completely understand how that whole thing goes. I mean, after dismantling this last rebuild, just because literally nobody could stay healthy on the offensive side of the ball. So,
Oh yeah, no, I know, and it was I left my last season covering the Sox was 17, and so we were starting to see some of the guys show up, and it was like, oh man, what happens if Luis Robert and Kopech come through and Moncada and and then to see what they've all experienced over the years, it's been crazy. And then when Abreu left, like the bottom just dropped out, and Abreu. That was 100% the right decision as far as you couldn't give him that contract. Houston overpaid. What a terrible contract. The bat speed was going down. But it felt like he was maybe sort of the glue. He was that guy that people looked up to, and it just fell apart so fast after that. And it's crazy because there was a lot of talent there. I mean, it was fun to watch the talent be accumulated and just look back on the trades. I mean, you think about the Adam Eaton trade alone and just the three guys that have come out of that and how they're all still major league pitchers, all still in rotations. Ronaldo's had a resurgence in Atlanta and has been electric, although still injured too. And but you look at that and the sale trade, they got a lot of great value in some of those deals. And it was fun to see it all accumulated. And, it didn't materialize the way they wanted, but it was certainly in place.
That's back when you were busy at the winter meetings,
Yeah, oh man.
as opposed to
Oh,
covering a team now that waits until February to do anything. It seems like.
let me tell you. I'll just do a quick story. I remember the reaction when the Eaton trade happened, because we were in there's one big media room and probably 250 people are in there, and somebody else broke it because let's be honest, somebody always bigger breaks the trade first, and I think it may have been Passan or Ken Rosenthal or John Hammond, and it was Adam Eaton to the Nationals, and here are the three players going back, and the room was like, really? And like, who else is in the trade? And I remember texting someone with White Sox. I was like, who else is in the trade? And they said no one. And I'm like, I just hammer it out real quick, and the room goes, whoa, like nobody, everybody thought David Robertson was in that trade, right? Everybody thought that somebody else was going to Washington to get Dunning and Ronaldo and Giolito, beyond Eaton. And Eaton's contract was a steal. Like for the production he offered, it was a steal. But I remember Andy McCullough turning to me going, "Hayes, really?" I'm like, "Yes, really." And like people were like, it was a good moment at a time that was terrible for the franchise, right? You're trading Adam Eaton and you're trading Chris Sale, and you're basically saying this team sucks. We're moving on from them. Let's start over. And yet they did really good acquiring talent at the time, and it was fun to cover for sure.
yeah, the crazy thing about that trade as well, the Eaton trade, is that Rizzo didn't end up getting great value on that trade
Except in the World Series.
until that year when they finally won the World Series. So I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it
exactly.
ended up paying off.
Didn't he homer in Game 7? I think he did.
I think
Um,
so.
he homered late in one of the games, and it was a critical home run. And it was like, okay, it was sort of like the Giants with Barry Zito. It was like 6 years of shit, and I hope I can swear on
Yeah,
this.
you're fine.
It was 6 years of shit, and then because I grew up in Northern California, then there was Rally Zito, where he saved them from elimination in St. Louis. I think it was Game 5, and they rallied to win the series in 7 in San Francisco, and like all was forgiven because Barry Zito had like two good postseason games, and the rest of the contract was a total waste. But it worked out.
I remember justifying that trade to out of towners like the other way. Like Adam Eaton's really good, I swear. Look at these numbers, like he's awesome, like that sort of thing. But I was like, it was pretty exciting. So did speak. So I'm sure you had a bunch of messages from Twins fans like all winter. They finally did some stuff. Did they do enough? Do you think?
Not for Twins fans' sake. I like what they did around the edges because we saw 2 years ago with Michael A. Taylor, who is now on the South Side. And he's a great dude, and fans will appreciate the defense. And you know what? He hit a ton of homers with the Twins. I imagine he'll hit a ton of homers with the White Sox in a good hitting ballpark. But him coming in and being there as a Byron Buxton backup was huge. So they went out and got Harrison Bader to do that this year. Bader, there's similar profiles with him and Taylor, not quite as much power as Taylor, but both being Gold Glovers, that helps. It just having insurance for when Byron Buxton gets hurt is key. The Twins know that. They got Ty France on a steal kind of deal. They got him for 1 year, $1 million. Nobody was looking for him because his defense is not good. He's sort of a positionless guy, but he's played first base and DH. And when he really hits, he can hit. I think he had for 4 seasons, 2020 to maybe 2023, had like a 127 OPS plus in Seattle, which is amazing. Like if you have it might end up looking like a 730 OPS, but if you have a 730 OPS in Seattle, that's like having a 1200 OPS in Colorado back pre-humidor. Like it's just so hard to hit there, and he's been a really good hitter. He is healthy again, which was a thing for him last year. He had a heel injury. He suffered it on June 7th. He had a 732 OPS at the time. If the Twins got him, that 730 guy, with Seattle, it probably translates to like 775 for the Twins or 800. They'll take it. That's a good bat to length in the lineup. And they added Danny Coulomb as a left-handed reliever. They desperately needed that. So those are really the only additions they made. But they had a good foundation in place already. It's just more that they didn't shake it up after the collapse. They shook it up in other ways, and that's sort of in how they've run this camp and what they expect out of the players. They're trying to go about it that way because I think they think the band was good enough to get back together. It was just sort of a bad mix on the last record, and they'll try to change it up.
So, assuming that they're coming down the final stretch here, who are the Twins going to get help from in the farm system?
I like Luke Keeschel a lot. It's a guy I know the White Sox liked too, and were told no way. There was, I maybe got a little aggregated at the trade deadline because I was trying to basically say the two teams didn't want to talk to each other because why in the hell would the Twins want to help the White Sox get out of that mess and trade a player that they absolutely love? And why would the White Sox want to help the Twins, right? Like, I think the way I compared it once on radio was, I drive a Honda CRV. Now, I will sell you guys my Honda CRV, you White Sox guys, but I will sell you. It's like I think it's got a blue book of 17,000. I'll sell it to you for $40,000. All right, you guys can buy it for 40,000. If you're willing to pay 40, you can have my CRV. I think that's how the trades talks came down. The Twins did not want to give up Luke Keeschel at all. Luke Keeschel was a really good player. He's looked at in camp too, and yet if the Twins and the White Sox could have gotten a deal for Eric Fetty worked out, I mean Eric Fetty, like on that contract, is it's not as proven as Adam Eaton, but it's another one of those amazing contracts that the White Sox have gotten a ton of value out of. And I think that if they had been able to find some common ground, and again, the Twins weren't trading Keeschel, their front office head over heels for him, but he's a guy that could be a difference maker very quickly. He hits. He's born to hit. He had Tommy John at the end of last season, so he hasn't been in the field this spring yet, but he's expected to be and looks like a second baseman. He's fast. He hits with power. He's got a nice short stroke to the ball. Emmanuel Rodriguez could do that. He just needs to stay on the field. He's another guy that they've loved for a long time. He's 5'10". He's got a weird kind of package as far as there's not a lot of guys that profile like him, but he's got tremendous power, good speed. Maybe he could be a center fielder, but he probably sticks in the corners. But his bat to ball skills are great. His eye is very good, and he hits for power. And though the problem is he's had a knee injury, he's had a thumb injury, he's had an ankle injury, in line with like every Twins prospect ever. He's basically been hurt for a while. And last year he played 47 games, yet he made his way to AAA as a 20-year-old. So I think there's big expectations for him. Like I said earlier, Zebby Matthews, David Festa, maybe Andrew Morris, if they got into a rut with starting pitching, could be a guy that would help out for them. He throws strikes, he throws mid to high 90s, and they've had a lot of success with guys who kind of profile to be number 3s or 4s in rotation. We've seen that with Bailey Ober. They turned Joe Ryan around after acquiring him from Tampa Bay. So they've done a good job with their starting pitching in the last couple of years. But it would take a lot for us to see those guys here, just because that means injuries, and who knows how that all plays out. But the only guy I haven't mentioned is Walker Jenkins. He's not very far. He's everybody's sort of favorite. Like, I think he's number 3 overall prospect in baseball. But another guy, he got to camp and he hurt his ankle like in the first day he was in camp. He's fine and should be ready to go for regular season. But, it's possible he could get there because his swing and his strength is incredible. He's still extremely young. I think he's still, if he's turned 20, he hasn't turned 21 yet, but he just looks the part and he sounds the part and he's hit everywhere. And you look at his pro debut and look at his strikeout to walk, and it's like, that's inhuman. He's done that. They just need the power to come along with it. And he could be an electric player. It'd be fortunate for them if they could let him go a little bit slower, and maybe it's next year for him, but who knows? He could be here this year. The last guy I'll throw in there, Connor Prelip, who is their second rounder from either
Alabama, I think. Yeah, from a couple years ago.
Yeah, either 2022 or 2023. He's had 2 Tommy Johns, but I think I heard the stat today. He's throwing 98 left side. He'll come up as a reliever if he makes the majors this year. And he'll probably profile as a major leaguer reliever just because the 2 Tommy Johns. But I think in minor league games so far, he's struck out 12 of his last 14 batters. So he's nasty. He could make an impact too. And that might be an area where they need it if there's injuries in the bullpen.
Yeah, Walker Jenkins he just turned 20 in February. So
Yeah. He looks like he's 26. So
he definitely does. Callis and Mayo are over the moon with Walker Jenkins, and I think they predicted him to win Hitter of the Year this year, and I think that they had mentioned it last year as well, but because of injury or whatever, it didn't end up happening. So
yeah, he'll be on that list for a long time. He just has one of those swings that's really pretty, and he's smart and knows how to make adjustments. And he's not a guy that chases. He knows his zone, and if he can add the power component to it, I mean, even if he doesn't, he's going to be a good hitter. But if he can add the power component to it, and it's funny because it always reminds me of Blake Rutherford, right? Like, if Blake Rutherford had ever figured out the power part of it, man, he would have been an electric hitter. But at 19, 20, this is really early to say that about Jenkins, and they're very excited about like the stuff they worked with him in the offseason on. So it should be a fun year for him to see how he develops.
Well, we got to see that power from Blake Rutherford for like a month with the Nationals.
That's right. It was the Nationals. I do remember that. Yeah.
All right,
James, do you have anything else?
No, thanks for joining us, Dan. You made White Sox fans happy this offseason, a little bit at least, for first time in a while. The Ishbia stuff comes out and everybody's rushing back to get athletic subscriptions. So
that's we love that. And also, it's funny. I concurrently made Twins fans miserable, which probably made White Sox fans even happier. So it's it's a double-edged sword there for the Twins.
Well, on your way out here, Dan, do you want to let people know where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, you can check us out at The Athletic. I'm the Twins senior staff writer, but also over at Blue Sky, Dan Hayes, MLB. Don't be thrown off by the Disco Danny Hayes name tag there. Yeah, that is me going off a radio host nickname for me. So, but you can check me out there too.
All right. Well, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us and giving us all the information on the Twins. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
right on. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Yep. Take care, guys.